Hello, my name is Matt Bird, and welcome to the PublishU podcast, where we explore the real life stories of authors from around the world. Today, we're talking to Jennifer Campbell from Wiltshire in the United Kingdom, who has written a book called Soul Service. Jenny, it's great to have you with us as our guest today. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Wiltshire is a beautiful place. I think probably best known for Stonehenge.
Avebury, Stonehenge, the rolling downs, cows, no big towns, Salisbury Cathedral, Swindon over the motorway.
Beautiful
So
place. Beautiful
it
place.
is. It is.
Um, and Jenny, we've just published an amazing book with you. But before we get to all of that, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your working life. What is it you do?
I do all sorts of things, but basically I'm deputy program lead on a master's program at Waverley Abbey College in Surrey. Those of you who remember Selwyn Hughes, it's a offshoot of that.
Yeah, yeah,
On spiritual formation. So I do that for part of my working life, and the other part I'm itinerant, going around the country delivering seminars, workshops, retreats, uh,
great.
spiritual direction, all
Yeah, yeah.
online, and I also write.
Yeah, amazing, beautiful. Now, not everybody listening is going to have a faith perspective on life, so I'm really
Yes,
interested to just explore a little bit. You use the phrase spiritual formation.
yes.
Now, people may not think they're religious or a person of faith, but
Hmm.
lots of people are open to spirituality. So, just tell us a little bit more about spiritual formation. What's that all about?
Well, basically, if we made up of body, we know that, and mind, we know that, our emotions, but there's a spirit within us which needs to connect somehow with God. And it's that we are busy trying to understand and develop, I suppose, so that we're wanting to try and create big spiritual people as well as big muscular, physical, and, and mentally alert, emotionally sound.
Yeah,
But the spirit within us also, as we know, living in Avebury, everybody wants to come and kiss the stone, something spiritual in the air, even, but there's a connection with God, really.
yeah. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? We go to school and university
Mm.
and further education to grow our minds. We go to the gym or go running to
Yeah.
strengthen our physical bodies.
Mm.
But where do we go to nurture our spirit and our soul? And I think that's a really good question to consider.
Well, we do like to go to church to do that, but very often church is involved with the mechanics, what we do. But actually, formation is something which God does on the inside of us, which needs an encounter, which needs perhaps some ways of developing that through disciplines. And I mean, I run a lot, so I often pray when I'm out running.
Yeah.
It's a connection between nature and between God and between the inner me, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, amazing. So if somebody's kind of listening to this interview
Mm.
and they're thinking, "Gosh, I'd never really thought about nurturing the spiritual me,"
Mm.
and let's assume they're not necessarily a Christian. What couple of things would you encourage people to do to kind of grow their spiritual kind of aspect to their being?
I think it's something to do with the spiritual antennae. During the lockdown, everybody was walking, weren't they? So there was some connection with creation. And there's a start there, just being open to what's around us, to perhaps something in the sky or birds singing, etc. Also, I think the Bible is very important. Even if you've never read the Bible, maybe give it a go. Don't start with, some obscure book in the Old Testament, but begin with the life of Christ, begin with Jesus, read a gospel, and just ask yourself, is this real? Is it
Yeah,
pertinent to me?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I live between London and Sicily, and when I'm in Sicily, it's near the beach, and
Mm.
I walk on the beach every day. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. If it's summer, I'm swimming and sunbathing. If it's winter, if it's winter, I've still got a t-shirt on, but I'm strolling rather than swimming, and I find in that place just a real connection with myself and the otherness about life.
Oh,
Uh,
exactly.
so I
Yes.
really resonate to that, and as a person of faith myself, to looking at Jesus's life, because in a sense, well, in every sense, he gives us a picture of who God is, doesn't he?
Oh, exactly. And he also shows us who we can be as well. And I guess that spiritual formation is saying, can I be the very best? And who's the best person that I can imitate?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we've published your book, Soul Survive, Soul Service,
Yes, yes.
Soul Service. Um, I mean, how, what are you feeling, Jenny, about this book? I mean, are you excited it's out there?
I'm absolutely very excited because I think it's something that we absolutely need. And the few people who've read it or who've even dipped into it slightly are just excited. They say, we need this. And I think it's because very often, as spiritual people, but as Christians, we don't really address these things that we end up in long sessions of therapy about, when actually we need to just forgive somebody or we need to get unbound from some unhealthy soul tie.
Hmm.
So I have a very real sense that this might be of value within communities of faith and also for individual Christians to work their way through.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So soul service, is it kind of like doing an MOT on your soul?
Yes, it is a bit like in South Africa, we didn't have MOTs every year, which is why there's so many crock cars running around on the road. But here in this country, it's very important that you have an MOT on your car every year to make
Mm.
sure it's roadworthy. And it's the same with us. We can actually get really unhealthy people unless we keep checking on ourselves and seeing how we're doing in our spirit person, if you like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so tell us perhaps one of the tools or the techniques or suggestions that you make in your book about how we can do this spiritual MOT.
Well, I think the simplest one to start with perhaps would be the 5 steps to forgiveness, which is just a very practical way of saying, I've been carrying this grudge against somebody for years and I've never really done anything about it. I'm going to start with step one by actually identifying that grudge. Then I'm going to give God my own feelings about that, why I'm so angry and hurt and upset. Then I'm going to try and take by the bullhorns, this fact that Jesus forgave, therefore I can forgive too. And I have to make a choice to forgive. It's a volitional choice to say, if Jesus could forgive from the cross, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. So I can forgive as well. And then just choose to forgive and then bless the person as well, actually, which might be the harder thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Gosh, I mean, you summarized something very quickly there that's actually very deep and profound.
Mm.
Because we all get hurt by people, don't doesn't matter who we are. We're all susceptible to being hurt, and sometimes, well, many times I don't think that's intentional, that we hurt other people. But it's a real experience that we all face, isn't it?
I think so. And I think the more we can be reconciled in ourselves, that come to a sort of a wholeness, so that I'm not carrying around this weight of hurt or guilt or shame or unforgiveness, the better for us. We become lighter people.
Mm.
And I think that's part of the reason why it's so important. We don't need to necessarily be the best of friends with the person who's hurt us at all, but just to have a clean slate within myself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you mentioned you're from South Africa.
Yeah.
I wasn't born in South Africa, but I like to think there's some South African in me because I love spending time in South Africa. Um, and Nelson Mandela uh, once said, didn't he, that holding bitterness against someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to be hurt. Holding on to a grudge, holding on to unforgiveness. And I always find that profound because if we hold on to things like that, the only person that gets hurt is us,
Mm,
and it can send us literally to an early grave. So
yes.
it's so important what you're talking about, Jenny, to find forgiveness, and to let go of things and just put them down and move on.
I think so. And I think this is the South African situation of having to have done this ourselves,
Mm.
you know. Mm.
Where were you born in South Africa?
On the East Coast, so East London. I'm
Yeah.
actually going to East London today, but in this country, but in East London. And then on the other side of the country, Cape Town, I worked in there for many years. So, yeah, so I love Cape Town. It's the best city in the whole world.
Yeah, I'm inclined to disagree with you somewhat. I'm one of those English swallows that flies south from the English winter to the South African summer, and yeah, the South Africans call us swallows because we turn up for the best weather, don't we?
Yes.
Oh, so I'm just delighted that PublishU has been able to globally release your book, Jenny, and I think it's going to be so helpful to so many people in so many ways. Before we wrap up today, is there a thought that you want to leave with the people that are listening to our podcast?
I think if you have a book in you, it's very difficult sometimes to get it out because the process of publication, as I know of being a published author 5, 6 times already, is you you have this idea, you have this inspiration, you write it, and then you've got to wait another 1.5 to 2 years very often to get in a queue to get it published. And I think PublishU is a really great idea of getting material out in a very immediate way, so that if there is something of import, of significance that we are wanting the world to hear, as it were, we don't want to wait for another 5 years before people get to read it or listen to it. So I would really like to endorse this work and to say that I think it's been incredibly helpful for me personally, and also for others, to try to get whatever it is that's kind of a bee in your bonnet, to get it out there so
Mm,
that other people can read it or listen to it. And in my case, the soul service, 5 ways, 5 spiritual checkups, is part of this process of keeping us whole and healthy.
mm, mm. Oh, Jenny, I didn't know you were going to say that, so thank you very much. But I do scratch my head how on earth a traditional publisher can take 1.5 to 2 years to publish a book, and we do everything they do, and we do it in 100 days. I know we're very efficient in how we've done things, but I do scratch my head. But anyway, let's put that to one side. It's great to be able to serve people like you, Jenny, who have written a book that's timely and to be able to enable you to publish it globally in a timely way is so important. So thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you all for listening to the PublishU podcast, featuring the real life stories of authors from around the world. If you are interested in becoming an author like Jenny, please do visit our website, www.publishu.com, PublishU, the letter U.com. And if you enjoyed this broadcast, make sure you subscribe for more. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye for now.